and AstraZeneca, who will benefit from the steps that we have agreed. We have worked to lift market access barriers across a range of goods and services, particularly in the agri-food sector. On financial services, we have successfully secured new licences and quota allocations for UK firms to improve operating access in China. And we agreed to cooperate further, including by renewing our shared commitment to the UK-China Stock Connect scheme, first launched in 2019, deepening our cooperation on wealth management through a UK-China Wealth Connect scheme, and progressing initiatives on pensions and sustainable finance, delivering significant benefits for UK firms and for the City of London. I'm pleased that China agreed to issue its first ever overseas sovereign green bond in London during 2025, underlining the UK's position as a global capital for high-quality, sustainable finance. Mr. Speaker, the UK is a global leader in financial services, and there are significant opportunities to expand our presence in new markets. The tangible outcomes that we have delivered this week will help to deliver that. These steps are part of a wider programme, making substantive progress in improving arrangements for UK exporters and investors. This is reflected in new agreements on vaccine approvals, fertiliser, whisky labelling, legal services, automotives and accountancy, which has set us on course for this dialogue to unlock £1 billion of value for the UK economy. These outcomes, agreed with my counterpart, Vice Premier Herlifang, represent pragmatic cooperation in action, and they support secure and resilient economic growth. Because security and economic growth go hand in hand. This means finding the right way to build a stable and balanced relationship with China in our national interest. One that recognises the importance of cooperation in addressing the global issues we face, competing where our interests differ, and challenging robustly whenever that is required. In Beijing and Shanghai, I was clear that whilst we must cooperate on areas of mutual interest, we will confidently challenge on areas where we disagree. I expressed our country's real economic and trade concerns to the Chinese, including trade imbalances and economic security. And I raised concerns about Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, human rights and restrictions on rights and freedoms in Hong Kong, including the case of Jimmy Lai and the completely unjustified sanctions against British parliamentarians. A key outcome of this dialogue is that we have secured China's commitment to improve existing channels so that we can openly discuss sensitive issues and the ways in which they impact our economy. Because if we do not engage with China, we cannot raise our real concerns. This dialogue is just one part of our engagement with trading partners right across the world. Since becoming Chancellor, I've been to New York, Washington, Toronto and Brussels to build our global economic relationships, whilst my right honourable friend, the Business Secretary, has travelled to the Gulf to boost trade and investment. And my right honourable friend, the Home Foreign Secretary, is engaging with partners all over the world to deliver growth which benefits people across the United Kingdom. Because we must continue to go further and faster in driving economic growth to make working people better off. That is why yesterday the Prime Minister launched our AI Opportunities Action Plan to throw the full weight of government behind artificial intelligence in the UK, revolutionising our public services and making our economy more productive. It is why next week I will be meeting with business leaders, investors and entrepreneurs.
Well, we've been listening to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, deliver her update on her China visit and assessment on the UK economy. Of course, some turmoil in the markets over while she was away. Our political editor, Chris Hope, is on the line. Chris, I do apologise. We will interrupt you when... actually, I think we're about to hear some questions. We're going to go back live to the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Can I at the outset say it is good to see the Chancellor in her place and to thank her for advance sight of her statement. Mr. Speaker, I know that the Chancellor has been away, so let me update her on the mess that she left behind. The pound has hit a 14-month low. Government borrowing costs are at a 27-year high. Growth has been killed stone dead. Inflation is rising, impacting millions. Interest rates are staying higher for longer, and business confidence has fallen through the floor. The party opposite talked down the economy. They crippled businesses with colossal taxes, breaking all their promises. This is a crisis made in Downing Street. And Mr. Speaker, it should hardly surprise the Chancellor that international markets are uneasy. The UK's long-term borrowing costs have risen to their highest in almost 30 years. But while the government was losing control of the economy, Mr. Speaker, where was the Chancellor? Her trip to China had not even begun when my urgent question was taken in the House last week. She was still in the country, but she sent the Chief Secretary rather than face up to her own failures. So can I ask the Right Honourable Lady why she chose not to respond herself? Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor, of course, ducked the difficult questions by jetting off to Beijing. I believe that in Labour circles they are calling it the Peking duck, Mr. Speaker. Well, whatever was on the menu in China, was it really worth the unedifying sight of an increasingly desperate politician scampering halfway around the world with a begging bowl? Was it really worth it? The Chancellor's deal pales in comparison to Labour's black hole, which has opened up in the public finances while the Right Honourable Lady was absent from her station. To give a sense of scale, Mr. Speaker, the deal the Chancellor has announced amounts to £120 million per year. The rise in our borrowing costs due to her disastrous budget has added around £12 billion to our annual spending on debt interest alone. Literally 100 times what she says she has brought back from Beijing. That is money that cannot now go on the public's priorities. 12 billion is enough to pay for 300,000 nurses, to cover Labour's pernicious winter fuel payments cut for 8.5 years. And of course, even before this latest market reaction, the budget meant spending tens of billions more in servicing our debt. According to the OBR forecast, 2/3 of the money raised from the Chancellor's jobs tax will be swallowed up by additional debt interest. Forget those billions going on better public services. They are going on paying the price of Labour's mismanagement. And we on this side know how this sorry story goes. We have seen it, Mr. Speaker. We have seen it all before. Socialist governments that think they can tax and spend their way to prosperity. Labour governments that simply do not understand that if you tax the living daylights out of business, you will get stagnation. They do not understand, Mr. Speaker, because there's barely a shred of business experience on the front bench opposite. And can I ask the Right Honourable Lady, which of her promises will she break if in March the OBR judge that she is now in breach of her own fiscal rules? Will she cancel promised spending? Will she ramp up borrowing? Or will she raise taxes yet again? Mr. Speaker, this whole sorry tale is nothing short of a Shakespearean tragedy, playing out before our eyes. This is the Hamlet of our time. They promised the electorate much while pouring the poison into their ear. At the end, you can feel the end. The Chancellor flailing, estranged it seems from those closest to her, those about her falling, the drums beating ever closer. To go or not to go, that is now a question. The Prime Minister will be damned if he does, but he will surely be damned if he does not. The British people deserve better.
Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Chancellor is simply not serious. I mean, I've been on that side for 14 years. I think that usually when you have a statement, you ask some questions. Now, we heard a lot from the Right Honourable gentleman about what he wouldn't do. But we've heard absolutely nothing about what he would do. Now, you can now see what happens when the leader of the opposition tells the shadow cabinet they shouldn't have any policies. Because, as far as I can tell, the Conservative Party's economic strategy is to say that the UK should not engage with the second largest economy in the world. Or indeed with our nearest neighbours and our biggest trading partners in the European Union. His economic strategy is to support higher spending, but none of the right decisions that are required to deliver sound public finances. And his economic strategy is to ignore the mistakes of the past, with no apology to the British people for his part in Liz Truss's mini-budget that crashed the economy. Now, I mentioned Liz Truss's mini-budget, but I appreciate that, having said that, I may now receive a cease and desist letter from her later. Now, the one question that the Shadow Chancellor did ask was, why did I go to China? Well, I went to secure tangible benefits for British businesses trading overseas. And the Shadow Chancellor said, well, it wasn't worth it. Well, you say that to HSBC, to Standard Chartered, Prudential, Schroders and the London Stock Exchange, who attended those meetings with me last week and have all said about the difference that it would make. Now, I have been under no illusion about the scale that we face. After 14 years of stagnant economic growth, higher debt and economic uncertainty. And we have seen global economic uncertainty play out in the last week. But leadership is not about ducking these challenges, it is about rising to them. The economic headwinds that we face are a reminder that we should, indeed we must, go further and faster in our plan to kickstart economic growth that plunged under the last government. By bringing stability to the public finances after years of instability under the party opposite, unlocking investment that plummeted under the previous government, and pushing ahead with the essential reforms to our economy and public services. That is my message to the House today. Because if we get it right, the prize on offer to us, to the British people, is immense. The opportunity to make working people off by making Britain better off. That is the mandate that this government has, and this is what we will deliver.
Chair of the Treasury Select Committee, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome my right honourable friend's commitment to growth in this country and to encourage investment in the UK. Listening, though, to the Shadow Chancellor, you'd think that the country was going to hell in a handcart. And doesn't she agree with me that there is no time for panic? That it is perfectly possible.
Apologies to Dame Meg Hillier. We're going to pull away from the House of Commons for the moment and speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who was listening to that remarkable exchange between the Chancellor and the Shadow Chancellor. Chris, what was your main takeaway?
Yes, hi Tom, hi Emily, that's right. Well, I'm looking at the optics of that scene in the House of Commons with Cabinet Ministers grouped around the Chancellor. Now, just yesterday, a day ago, the PM would not say whether she would be the Chancellor at the next election. Well, I asked directly, yes or no, will she be there? That was clarified in the evening briefing, or the late afternoon briefing with Downing Street, to say that she would be Chancellor at the time of the next general election. And it came up in the Cabinet meeting in the building behind me, 10 Downing Street, about 2 or 3 hours ago. The economy was raised, and the Chancellor made clear that her government wants to tackle the underlying challenges, as well as setting up a new national wealth fund, and we'll hear more of that, I think, later this week. But no question, I mean, the issue of confidence didn't come up in the cabinet today. But Rachel Reeves certainly getting a pummelling there from Mel Stride, scampering around the world with a begging bowl. He said it's a crisis made in Downing Street. He also said that her tax-raising budget, £40 billion raised, of course, back in October budget. He said that's increased our debt obligations by £12 billion, wiping out the headroom. And he said the big question, I think, which will set the tone for the next two months or so, is what will you cut in that update from the OBR on the 26th of March? Will you go after the benefits budget? Will you be able to have to push out the target of getting to 2.5% of spending of GDP on defence further to make sure we don't break the fiscal rule? We were told and have been told by the PM repeatedly that there are no plans for more big tax rises. So what can she do? Now, her reply was the Chancellor's not being serious. Why wouldn't you want to speak to the second biggest economy in the world after that visit to China at the weekend? But no question, she's under pressure right now, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves.
Not to focus on the trivial, Christopher, but did you hear him call her a Peking duck? There was some joke about Peking duck that seems to be picked up, but I didn't quite catch it myself. Did you?
I didn't in my it's a bit distorted, my piece here from Downing Street. But I can check that out for you. On
yes, I think he called her a Peking duck.
He said that was the word in Labour circles, that she is being known as a Peking duck.
Right, OK.
It was on the menu.
A play on the Chinese trip.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Christopher.